Well, hello there. Nice to see you. I missed you guys. In light of last month's unexpected dev update cancellation, I've tried to sneak some surprises into this one and really kick it into overdrive this time, which was helped by the fact that August and September were both really great months for development, aided a lot by LTSL, which I'll be talking about some more later in the update. Now, because I've actually got a lot of stuff to show this time, I've decided to do something different. For the first time, I'm going to segment the video into chapters. We're actually going to have 5 different chapters so that A, it's easier for me to record and narrate pieces individually, and B, if you're not particularly interested, especially like maybe in the technical parts later, you can skip them, although you should watch the whole thing because it's pretty cool. So, that being said, this is Josh, and welcome to the 20th LT Development Update. This is covering August and September of 2014. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Alright, welcome to the new shape of LT. So we usually start with graphics, but this time I'm going to start with UI. As you guys know, I love talking about UI because to me it's such an interesting and fundamental part of the game that I really love to explore it. And this month, I've been trying to bring every subsystem in LT up to a point of flexibility and ease of use that I just feel totally comfortable rapidly iterating on the rest of the content of the game. And to do that with the UI, I needed to kind of drop some of the conceptions that I developed about it and really think hard to bring everything back to a point where it's easy for me to develop, because that's the key from here on out. And so, you know, those of you who have followed for the past few months will know I kind of became obsessed with this idea of a node-based UI. And if you've followed before that, you'll know that we used to have a normal UI. Well, this month, I've tried to integrate all of the best ideas that I've ever had about UI into one kind of grand UI engine to rule them all. And it's given me so much flexibility and elegance at the same time that I'm absolutely in love with what I can do with it. And as I flick through these menus here, I'm just kind of going to be demonstrating some of the concepts. I'm not going to talk specifically about every element, but you can just sort of see the shape of this new UI. See that it's integrating concepts from the Node UI, but it's got a lot of familiar layout from standard UIs, and above all else, very easy to use, very easy, very playable. Perhaps most excitingly, everything I'll show you today in terms of UI is implemented 100% in LTSL, the scripting language. And so what that means is A, it's all completely moddable, all the functionality, you know, from the menus to the reticle in the center to even basic things like widgets, windows and lists. I mean, all of that is implemented in LTSL, which makes it extremely flexible, but also very, very easy for me to rapidly develop, which again is really the key theme of the remainder of LT development. So that's very cool, and I'll show you later how I can actually reload the UI in real time to iterate on it very quickly. Next up, I am going to talk about something specific which I rather like this month, which is the targeting kind of mechanics and the way it plays with the reticle. This is just a good demonstration of what the UI can do, and it was quite easy to implement, and the LTSL is very short, but I really like what it allows me to do in terms of tracking targets. You see, I can hover over a target, and then I'm hitting a hotkey to target them, and then I get a tracker on my reticle, which makes it very easy for me to keep an eye on where that object is as I maneuver around it. Very, very good thing to have when you're trying to maneuver and stay near an object at the same time. Really going to make combat a lot more fluid. But you'll also see that I keep bringing up these right-click context menus on objects, which I think is a great way to interact with them. And that too is very easily implemented in LTSL, which I like a lot. And I just love interacting with things in that way. Just, directly right-click them in the world and radial menu, boom, I get the object information. Now, you'll see a lot of that content is not actually filled in. It's not because it doesn't exist, but it's because not everything is in a form where I want to share it yet. So most of those components will actually be full widgets in and of themselves, but I don't want to show all of them yet. You'll have to wait a little longer for that, because I'm working on fleshing out the content in this new UI using LTSL. By the way, that was a dev tool, not a game feature. I just can jump to objects easily now, which helps me navigate the game very quickly when I'm in developer mode. So I'm just going to play around a little more with this UI and just let you get a feel for how it feels to interact with the world and to fly with this new interface. Keeping in mind that the content with which is populated is still a bit in its early shape, but as a whole you can see the shape of this UI. Really, you can see what it's going to do and how. And so now we've got the scanner. I always like to bring that up just to show where we're at in terms of interface. Scanner's a really cool tool that I like. You see there's a wormhole over there, and you can see that appearing on the high end of the scanner. I really love how the scanner looks under this new UI tech. And again, the way that scanner is drawn is 100% in script form, so you can make your own mod like Eric's Uber Scanner 3.0. You know what? You go, Eric. Show them how scanners are done. I won't stop you. Whoa! Okay. That clipping is not a result of physics being turned off. It is on. It's just that my dev tool landed me like within that asteroid, which is kind of a problem for the physics engine. That was the dev tool's fault, not the engine's. When I get up close to this wormhole, you really see my scanner being totally saturated with signal. That's because they put out a pretty strong signal so that you can find them from far away. Of course, you have to know what you're looking for. I should note that I've given myself perfect information of the world, which is why I can see all the objects on the screen without necessarily having discovered them. In the game, there is a mechanic for discovering objects, so if I haven't discovered it, it won't be displayed on my world space object display, and I can't just see where wormholes are. This is actually a really nice region. I said I wasn't going to talk about graphics, so I won't, but I'm going to sit here for a minute because I like that. It's moments like this where I just really appreciate, the whole procedural universe thing. Makes me really happy to think that there are an infinite number of places in the game like this where you can just sit and be in space. Very nice. Alright, I'm just going to play around a little bit more, but I think you get a good sense of the way this UI works now. Oh, you can see I'm picking up something. I think that was the central star. Oh, and I just picked up a colony on the scanner. So I'm picking up some ore and that wormhole and the colony and the central star at different times depending on where I'm aiming. The star is having some issues with occlusion. You can get that fixed. Oh, so there's the central star and some ore at the same time. We'll actually talk more about scanning in a later chapter. And more about LTSL as well. But for now, I think I'm done showing you what this UI is all about. So let's move on. Hope you like it. Alright, now time for something we all know and love, before we really get rolling with this update, is graphics. I haven't paid a lot of attention to graphics lately in terms of talking about them in the updates because, well, I really haven't been focused on graphics lately. As you know, my time has been spent developing the more important pieces of the game. But there have been developments, and people have sort of noted that LT is kind of looking better, over the past few months. And I just want to take a few minutes to pay some respect to the kind of things that have been going on and try to highlight them. I've picked a particularly nice system for this demo so that you can see background nebulas really well. They're quite bright in this system, and it gives me a good chance to highlight the bloom effect, which has been with us for a long time, but has been one of those things that just time and time again I've been tweaking the math to get it just so. I had another big breakthrough this month in that math, and it's just led to an overall quality that well, it's just one step closer to the look that I wanted. And now I'm going to jump into a dusty zone, and we can see another development in the lighting tech, the way that the background actually shines through the dust. It's something I've never done before in quite this way, and I like the balance that it gives between, dust creates this kind of local effect where you're paying more attention to the objects immediately around you and less attention to the distant world, but the bright parts of the distant world now shine through in such a way that you kind of have a more global context, even though you're paying attention to the nearby objects. And as I fly out of this zone, you'll get to see that transition really nicely. So this is by far the best dusty to non-dusty transitional effect that we've had so far. I love that. I really love that. It makes me feel like I'm coming out of an asteroid field or a dust field. I don't know. Now, zones still don't look great from afar. I'll be the first to admit that, but that has been paid no light this month. Everything in time, as always. But as we fly back in, we'll again see that dust coming up on us, and the background again being stifled except for the bright parts which shine through in combination with that bloom to create a lovely effect. I really love this system. Really, really, really nice system. Okay, now I want to talk about the UI a little bit in the way it's composited, because this is another neat effect. I want to just draw attention to the way that the UI blends with the game world, because if you look carefully, you'll see this sort of softness to the way that it interacts with the game world. It doesn't feel like it's just slapped on top of the world, and that's because it's actually not. Again, using some sort of interesting math, it's composited on the game world in such a way that it tries to create this immersive blending, where the UI and the game world are kind of merged into one entity that feels more continuous than disjoint pieces. And so if you look carefully, especially at the scanner, at the center reticle, you'll see that the colors of the game world and the UI actually influence each other, creating this very nice, to me, immersive effect. You can see it's pretty pronounced in dark regions. As I bring up a window, you can see the edges of that window, for example, blending into the game world quite nicely. So that's just one more step in making LT the immersive, dreamy creation that I had always wanted. And finally, the colors of the interface are being now affected in a way that's very similar to the world. They're being artistically color graded in a way that just creates this nice sci-fi interface look. So if you think the colors of the UI look nice, that's because there is, again, some magic going on there, which I'm quite happy with. So that's just a quick overview of some of the small-ish things that have been happening in the graphics world. And, well, let's move on further into this update. Time to get more serious. I want to take a little time to talk about the colony work that I've done this month, because it was a big part of my month. I'm really trying to solidify the way that colonies work, and I've been able to push that a lot in LTSL and been able to play with a lot of concepts. And I want to talk specifically about one today. I'm going to talk about colony cultures, how AI players are born, what happens when one AI player loves another very much. No, just kidding. But we are going to talk about some interesting things with respect to the AI. So first of all, I'm going to pull up a menu on these colonies, pull up some information. You can see that there are 3 on this planet. Okay, now, like most of the menus that I've shown so far, this menu is withholding some information because it's not quite ready to be seen. But one piece of information that I did expose that I want to talk about and is quite interesting is the cultural traits profile. So if you look to the top left, you can see these 7 traits and kind of meters next to them to show you how prevalent they are in this colony. Those traits are aggressive, creative, explorative, greedy, intellectual, lawless, and sociable. So that gives you an idea that Virstad 9 as a whole, the culture is fairly aggressive, creative, and lawless. Interesting. But what's more interesting is that cultural traits are actually that those 7 traits are the same personality traits that you will find in every AI player. Every AI player in LT has these traits, and they govern the way that that AI player makes decisions, how it chooses its profession, and how overall it chooses to play the game. I'm going to pull up the other colonies on this planet, and you'll note that there's some similarities. Both of the cultures I've looked at so far have been highly aggressive and creative. Kardshu, a little bit less so, but very much lawless like Virsted, and very greedy like Bracano. So this is just a quick side note, but that's not a coincidence that these cultures that exist on the same planet are relatively similar. That's a general paradigm that you'll see in LT. The generation of everything is such that there's spatial coherence. Colonies that are close to each other, on the same planet even, are going to be relatively similar. Systems that are next to each other will be relatively similar. But the further you venture out into space, the farther away two objects are, the lower that correlation is. To the point that if you go many regions away, there's going to be no connection between these colonies and those colonies. Now, I want to talk about where these AI players come from, because this is a really interesting part of the colony mechanics in LT, and it's already implemented. For the first time, these AI players that you'll see in this system were actually not spawned out of thin air for the purpose of this demo. They were just born at one of these three colonies. So that means they each have their own home, so to speak. And what's more interesting about this is that that's actually a connection that you can use to gain some information in LT. The way that this works is that when an AI player is born, it kind of inherits the traits of the culture in which it was born, but plus some random offset to make it, its own individual. Much like in real life, you would expect someone from a certain culture to be somewhat reflective of those traits, but to have their own personal flair as well. The interesting thing about this for limit theory is that when you meet an AI player, you don't have access to their personality. You'll have to acquire that information either by working with them or by perhaps purchasing it on the data market. But you do know where they were born. That actually that's available in the public profile of all players. So if you know where an AI player was born, and you've been to that colony, or you know about that colony, the interesting thing is you can infer some information. In particular, if this guy right here was born at Virsted 9, I would know that he's likely, it's not certain, but he's likely to be aggressive and lawless. So I would probably want to avoid him because he could well be a pirate and probably is not someone that I want to work with. But that just brings to light a more interesting concept in LT, which is that it's a game of using your mind. There's this web of information behind the scenes. We haven't talked much about it, but I'm going to be introducing it more over time, is that there's information and there's logic behind everything in LT in such a way that if you use your brain when you're playing this game, now you don't have to, but it can help you. And you can make things like intelligent inferences based on other information that you have that connects. Now, just because I'm talking about a lot of high-level stuff, I'll just blow this guy up so that you can have some shiny effects. But so, to me, this is really interesting because it's a sensible way for AI players to be born. It allows you to glean information in the absence of information, and it just generally gives you more incentive for understanding this procedural world in which you're placed. There is logic, there is real math behind all of it, and it works in such a way that if you, over time as you play the game, you come to understand that logic more, you will be smarter and smarter at understanding and handling those connections. And that can really help you. It can help you choose which players you want to work with in the game, and it can help you to really make the right decisions when it comes to interacting with NPCs. Now, there's a lot more to talk about with respect to colonies, and a lot of work, unfortunately, that I didn't get to show, but I do think that's enough for now. So we'll be seeing more on colonies in the future. For now, we'll bring this chapter to a close. Very exciting for me, though. But onward we go. Okay, so you've been hearing a lot of big talk about LTSL, like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever, so much productivity, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever, show me. Okay, I want to show you guys. So now I want to do some live coding, a little bit like I did last time, but better this time. I want to show you how I can actually change the game's code in real time and have it reload within the engine to iterate on specific bits of functionality. So notice that this UI is actually curved. I don't know if you noticed that yet, but a lot like the Nodal UI, it has this subtle curved projection going on. You can see that on the windows, on the scanner. And you're like, hey Josh, I really just want a flat UI. Can you drop all that nonsense? Like, really, is it that hard? No, it's not actually. One number. There you go. Bam. Instant reload. Now you have your flat UI. Straight lines are back. It does make the UI look a little crisper because there's no projection being applied. Very easy. But what's that line? Like, what's that all about? Who does that? Who just puts a random line there? Okay. All right. Okay. Calm down. Very easy. Boom. Gone. No problem. Personally, I kind of liked it, but you insisted, so, you know, you can have your way. Next up, that top menu. What's the deal with that? Shouldn't that be a little more outstanding than the rest? I mean, it is the player menu. And although I haven't shown a great deal of it, it's kind of like the most important menu, you know, that exists in the game. So, like, shouldn't you make those icons pop a little bit? Okay. You're absolutely right. Let's change that. There you have it. Once again, in real time, I've recompiled, reloaded part of the UI, all without any problems. And now let's play with the projection a little bit more, because maybe you like the curves and you think that more curves makes a better UI. So, boom. That's a little too much for me, but maybe you like it. And what if it's not round, but it's cuspy? Sure, notice how the cursor still works perfectly through some math magic. Okay, back to normal. Now, I will admit that's neat, right? But it's not that impressive. That's kind of like some toy playing with some toy functionality. It didn't really do anything pivotal to the game. So now what I'm going to try to do is something a little bigger. I want to actually implement a piece of technology, a new piece of real working tech in the game live for the first time, having never tried it before. Because I was thinking before this update, I didn't get the time to do it, but I was thinking it'd be real cool when you pulled up an object's information if you got to see that object's scanner signature in isolation. That way you could know what an object looks like on your scanner. So what I'm going to do now is try to implement that in real time again for the first time. So I'm going to speed up time. This process takes me about 8 minutes. I'm going to cut it down to 2, so we're seeing a time factor of 4. Try not to look at the code because it'll make you a little bit dizzy. Just listen to the voice, because I want to talk a little bit about LTSL while I do this code. The interesting thing about what's going to happen here, by the way, if you didn't know, I narrate after I record the video. That's why I already know the future. The interesting thing that's going to happen here is that I'm going to mess up in about 3 ways. I'll make about 3 major mistakes when I write this code that's going to prevent it from being able to compile and run. However, the game will not crash at all during this time. The UI will still completely work, which is kind of one of the really cool things about LTSL, and part of what makes it so easy to iterate is that when a piece of functionality in LTSL doesn't work, the code just basically doesn't exist. And LTSL can isolate it and basically cut it out in such a way that everything that doesn't depend on it is still working. And so that's going to allow me to keep the game engine running and to keep the UI working. And what'll happen is I just won't see the widget until I get it right. I'll have some error output in my console and I'll try to fix it. But it's really nice that this language actually has compilation failure in a very soft way, to such an extent that usually the functionality simply works. So there you go. Really, really quickly, you saw that the widget just wasn't there. There was no change. So I'm going to fix it. You try doing that with a C++ compiler or a C compiler. It's not going to work. I really love this because it helps me so much. Again, the engine never crashes. The AI keeps doing its thing. The rest of the engine doesn't care. That piece of code just doesn't exist to it. But here, finally, I'm going to get it right. So let's slow down time. And there we have it. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I first saw that blew my mind. I had no idea that it was going to actually work so well and look quite good. I did not expect to be able to implement something this functional and nice in such a short amount of time, but that's the nature of the new development style of LT. I'm going to change the color. We're back to real time now, by the way. I'm going to change the color a little bit and the size. And there you have it. Now, I'm so excited about this because I actually think it looks really good and it's functional. You can actually see an object's isolated signature, which tells you what to look for on the scanner. Now you know what the ship looks like. There it is, that little blip on the left. You know what a colony looks like. So you know when you see pieces of those signals on the scanner, you know what it is. And so it's not only functional, but I think it adds quite a nice flair to the object information menu. It's so funny. When I did this, I was just baffled that I got something that I actually think I'm going to keep for the final game. I really didn't expect that. So I think that's a great demo of what it really means to have this new technology to help me develop LT. You know, in real time, I can just implement new functionality, see it all unfold without restarting the engine, and it just helps me so much to stay in the game, to stay focused. You know, I can just unfold these ideas as they come to me with such ease. It's really just a great feeling. Hard to convey, but hopefully you can see that I'm very excited about it. Now I'm going to tweak the visual style of this a little bit because it looks a lot like the scanner, which it should, but maybe we could give this a more distinct visual look. So I'm going to try drawing the amplitude bars with dots rather than these lines. So we'll see how that turns out. And we're back to real time now, so this kind of tweaking takes absolutely no time. Let's see how that looks. Oy, so a little bit too heavy. Let me try toning it down a little bit. Reload. There we go. Now, that's pretty cool. It actually, I think it lets you see the isolated signature a little bit more clearly. I don't think it looks quite as good as the other style, so I'm going to change it back. I'm just going to undo that, but it does demonstrate to you, you know, once again that we can iterate and explore new ideas really, really quickly, which is awesome because I love exploring development ideas, and it just helps me build a better game. So there you have it. I think I'm going to continue to work with this piece of code, and hopefully you'll see something like that in the game because I think it's functional and quite beautiful. So that's cool. I really, this chapter went much better than I even expected it to. So that's so great. Now, there's more that we could do with this. You know, we could make it so that the signal is noisier at a distance, so you really have to get close to an object if you want to see its isolated, naked signature, because that is a powerful tool, you know, that you can see it in isolation. And in the future, we could also have like bookmarking, so that you could bookmark basically a signal, and then your scanner might be able to automatically pick up that isolated signal and help you identify things. But that's just ideas for the future. You can see we've already got this basic concept working in 8 minutes. So great. Hope you enjoyed that, because I sure had fun with that. So we've just seen what the marriage between LTSL and the actual LT engine functionality can do in the context of the full game with all of its facets loaded. But what I want to talk about now is really exciting and really major shift that's happening in the LT development process that comes at a great time as I'm trying to push forward with all the content that's going to populate the final game. I've got the systems to do that, but now we really need to get the content there. And this shift that's happening now is I've been working over the past month to change the way that LT works. Is it's no longer just a game application, hard-coded launches a game. It's actually now just a very lightweight launcher that launches an LTSL script. And that script then builds the application that it wants by calling into the LT engine and accessing the functionality in a certain way. Now, what's interesting about this is that instead of just launching the full game, I can now write very simple scripts that call very selectively into the engine and just isolate a very specific component of that functionality. So I'm creating what I call little test beds now, which are, again, simple little scripts that take a specific piece of the game that I want to iterate on, that I want to add content to, but I don't want to see everything else, and I create a test bed that shows me just that piece of the game and allows me to work really, really quickly, both because it reloads quickly, because it doesn't call into all that other stuff that's in the engine, and because it removes all the distractions, and I'm just focused on that one element. So this is really, really exciting for me as a developer. Maybe not so much so for you as a player, but for me, being a one-man developer, it's imperative that I find the most effective way possible to develop content, because I'm one person and I have limited time. And so, this is really a great thing for me. I've already got these little testbed applications that I can work on the UI in isolation, implement new widgets, new components, and I've got an AI testbed where I can pit AI opponents against each other and actually watch the outcome, so that I can work on my dogfighting algorithms, work on fleet combat algorithms without anything getting in the way. I can basically just see the statistics of how they're doing without loading any of the graphics, the whole world, all that. I've got a test bed for the HUD, where that's basically how I developed the whole HUD as you see it today, just in isolation and just rapidly iterating the components of that without loading the full game. And then I've got other little test beds, some of them just for fun, and stressing certain parts of the graphics. I've got a Mandelbrot set viewer that is trying to push LTSL performance-wise so that I can benchmark it. I've got some drawing application that allows me to test the interface graphics and also kind of play with node branching algorithms. And I've got a little loading screen testing, or I'm just playing around with loading screens for limit theory. But the key is that all of this is about very, very focused development, focused, fast iteration. It just allows me to work in a way that I've never been able to work before, where instead of, coding this piece of functionality, compiling, waiting for the compilation, launching the engine, waiting for everything to load, then seeing all those distracting pieces, trying to get to the piece of the game that I want to test, that can take quite some time, and it's also distracting because you're seeing all this stuff that you don't necessarily want to be testing. But nowadays, I work in a world where most of the time I'm testing things in isolation, and I can just, boom, see them instantly, iterate on them instantly, without any distraction, and getting immediate feedback. And I think that's so important for productivity, is to see that immediate feedback so that you can just be in the zone, just drill the content down, without ever losing focus and without having to wait on all these bottlenecks. So for me, this is just the most exciting that it's ever been to develop LT, and it comes at a great time, again, as I am trying to make that final push towards implementing all the content now that I have the systems and the knowledge of how to work those systems. It's a good time to be alive. It really is. And so I look forward to developing more of these test beds and isolating more components of the game so that I can just polish each and every one of them and push all that content to a level of quality that's reflective of what the final release should be. So, make no mistake, this is a very big change in how LT is being developed, and it's a very, very good thing for the future of LT development. Very excited about it. And just wanted to share that with you guys. Probably the developers are more interested in that than anyone, but maybe players can see the value in that as well. So I promise I'm going to shut up about LTSL now. All right, well, I think that about does it. But in closing, I want to make a note about the nature of the monthly updates. Over the past few months, there's been this sort of growing angst with the process, both because you guys seem to really like the videos and kind of expect them to come on the last day of the month, and you like your monthly LT treat. And for that, I'm really humbled, and I appreciate it. I mean, it means a lot to me that people like these updates and like the work I'm doing, so thank you for that. But number two, or B actually, LT is getting bigger and bigger. There's more and more stuff in the game, and my monthly work is getting more and more kind of broad every month. So that means that there's more work to be done to prepare for the update as I try to bring all these elements that I'm working on up to a level where I'm willing to show them to the public. And so those two elements combined have kind of led to an increased stress in the update process, which is has not been a good thing for me. And so I just want to say from here on out, I'm not going to say that the update will come on the last day of the month. I'm going to say it'll come around the end of the month. I'm going to stop doing the whole like, it'll come today and then, oh, sorry, it'll come tomorrow. And then, oh, man, I really promise this is the last day. That's stressful for me and it's disappointing for you guys. So I think it'd be a win-win situation if we just make it such that the updates will come near the end of the month. You guys know that. You're not sure when. I know that I have the time that I need to prepare to bring them to completion, and I'm not stressed out about upsetting you guys. And when you get it, great. It'll just, boom, there it is. Monthly update can be a treat, and everybody can be happy about it. So I think that'll work really well. And it's a shift that needs to be done just, for the sake of my sanity. So expect your October update to be coming sometime near the end of October. And until then, you guys take care, and thanks for watching, and come see us on the forums. Bye.